Good morning, option addicts. It is Tuesday, February the 13th. Happy Tuesday to you all. This is going to be part 2 of the watch list from which we started yesterday. Each week I try to throw out a watch list of stocks that are bouncing off of support. This here is the second segment where we're going to look at a couple of stocks that are forming price patterns. You'll notice that on my chart here I've got a chart of USANA Healthcare. And the nice thing about this was a trade that we looked at last week. Ascending triangle, popped outside of that, confirmed, had a huge run up until earnings, and then right now we're starting to go through that consolidation period, which means we might start to show a little bit of a flag. While we're still in the early stages here, I think you've seen a lot of volume transition in USANA. Could be a really good mover if it was to break to the upside out of this consolidation again. So watch this as a potential flag. Yes, the flag is enormous, I mean, relatively speaking, compared to the size of the average movement out of USANA. But nonetheless, I think this one doesn't take up too hefty of a percentage. So keep an eye on this one. I think it could be a good mover once it breaks back to the upside. Next on that list is Autodesk, symbol ADSK. And if you look at this, higher highs, higher lows. We've just reached recent highs, 52-week high at about 45. What's interesting about this particular stock, though, is that it hit it twice. It stopped making the higher highs, and right now is starting to confirm lower lows. So a broke of support here means a double top has been confirmed in Autodesk. Now I have a couple of trend lines drawn here. Okay, the pattern says that based on the duration here, or the size of this pattern, which measures from 42 to 43, we should see a 3-point drop, which should take us to about 39. However, what that does is that only partially fills this gap that opens at 37 and closes at 40. So what I'm thinking is you aim for 40 as a soft target. If it wants to break down and continue into that gap, it's likely over time that this gap will be filled, which means a long-term target at 37. So keep an eye on Autodesk because I like the reward here. As long as you tighten up your risk, this could be a really good trade. Next on that list is going to be CHK, Chesapeake. And what you'll see I have drawn here is a symmetrical triangle going on, a coil winding pretty tight. Today we're bouncing up higher within this triangle, and that's okay. Basically what we ought to look for is, I consider this to be a neutral pattern, which means it could break to the upside, it could break to the downside. What I'm waiting for is that signal to see which way it wants to go. And what you might see is about a 2.5 point move or so in either direction, whichever way it wants to break. So keep an eye on about 29.50 or 29, and whichever way it decides to move, there could be a good trade out of Chesapeake. I'm going to go to Dawson, which is DWSN. I'm sure a lot of you can remember that great head and shoulders formation that we traded just a couple months ago, back in December. This was one that was very memorable because it exceeded its price target with only a matter of days. Right now we had a pretty nice gap to the upside, and same thing we're seeing out of USANA, a little bit of a consolidation. Again, it does make up a huge percentage move, but the thing I think that's acceptable here is I look at Dawson, and in the past it has made these kind of moves before. So keep an eye on Dawson. If it does confirm a move to the upside, we're talking about a 6-point move it could potentially make. Marvell Technologies, which is a stock I haven't looked at in probably over a year. It's got a little bit of a descending triangle. And overall a downward trending stock. It's really struggled over the last year. Yesterday you can see we broke through support at about 18.25. And today, right now, we're retesting that old support as new resistance, which could offer for a pretty good entry point. If you look at this stock, we're talking a movement of about 2.5 points, which is pretty good for a $20 stock. Low risk entry point right here. Keep an eye on this trade. Set your targets at about $16 or in that range. Next on the docket is Hibbett Sports, ticker symbol HIBB. Another symmetrical triangle. However, yesterday you can see it broke to the downside. You might have even taken this trade on Friday because that trend line you can see was slightly broken on pretty good volume. Now, stock's recouping a little bit today. I mean, it's not really going down. It's kind of stalled. So there might be a problem with timing here since this was probably a really good trade as of Friday. I wouldn't be too surprised to see this thing come up and retest. So rather than take a trade on this right away, watch for a retest of about to 31.5 or so, and if it turns down from this, that might offer another good low-risk entry point on Hibbett. This particular stock, we're looking at about a 3.5 point move to be reached over about the next month or so. How about board gaming, BYD? What do I see going on here? A change of trend. You can see some of the casino stocks, gaming stocks, are showing to be a little bit weak, and here we sit right on that old support as new resistance. If it turns down from this could be a great entry point. What I've also drawn out here is kind of a similar circumstance to what we saw with Autodesk. So we've got support here at about 46.25. We've got resistance as high as about 48. So we're talking about a 2.5 to 3 point move, which means we downward project that from 46, and here we are right at about, should be at 44, which would start to penetrate that gap a little bit. If that does happen, that means this gap will likely be filled. If you're going to buy options, give yourself a little bit extra time so that that could be a potential scenario. Next on the list was NGA, Magna, another symmetrical triangle, and today might be that day that I've been waiting for. You can see price bars already outside of resistance, albeit not on a huge amount of volume, but got a really sharp eye on this one because here we've got a potential 5-point continuation of this trend once this is confirmed. Next I'm going to look at UCO, Universal Compression Holdings, something to that effect. Old resistance right here at 65, which was the close of this gap. From that you can see we had a price that ran up as high as about 71 or so, and starting to consolidate its way back down. Now, again, I don't think I want to take that entire gap as part of my price target here, because if gaps are substantial, I don't include those in my price targets. I set myself a lower target, that way I'm not disappointed. A good flag here from that old resistance is new support, and I'm looking for a break outside of this, which would be something in the ballpark of about $69 per share or so. If that happens, one might be able to expect about a 6-point movement in continuation of this trend. So UCO been strong as of late. It's reaching new highs. This one I'm definitely keeping close on my radar. Speaking of exciting, just kidding, we've got Bed Bath & Beyond. Not a very volatile stock, but if you look at this, stock's been reaching new highs. It's up there at a resistance level at 42, higher lows, which means we've got a little bit of an ascending triangle. If it breaks to the outside of 42, look for a trade for about 2 to 2.5 points move in continuation of this trend. It's been great so far. Hopefully it doesn't shut down anytime soon. Last on the list, UFPI. Universal Forest Products, haven't heard of them, but they're starting to come out of this downward trend, as you can see. In the short term, higher highs, higher lows. A short-term flag pattern. Looks like it's confirming today. It's closing outside of resistance. It's not very dynamic. It's short-term, but it also gives you guys an idea of what these things should look like on a typical scenario. So look for about a 2.5 point move, I guess we'll call it, in continuation of this upward trend at a minimum. So those are the price patterns for today. Just had a few things here I wanted to share with you. Just a couple of ideas. Add them to your watch list. Share them with your friends. If you guys have any questions, I'll be putting this into written format on the blog as well, and I'm also sharing these through Rever and YouTube. So catch them in any one of those 3 locations. Should be up here shortly. If you have any questions, let me know. Hopefully you guys have a great week in your trading, and hopefully we'll even see you tomorrow.